My name is Ella. I still remember the day everything changed, as if it happened just yesterday. I was only 8 years old, sitting at the old wooden table in our tiny kitchen, quietly fidgeting. My fingers under the table, my parents sat across from me, their faces heavy with emotions. I was too young to fully understand. Bad reached out and took my hand. His hand once strong and warm, now trembling, sweetheart. He said softly, his voice thick like a heavy cloud. There's something very important I need to tell you. I didn't fully understand, but I could feel something terrible was about to happen. And it did that day I learned my dad had cancer. I couldn't even picture what that meant. I just knew it stole the light from his eyes and took away my mother's smiles. For the next 2 years, our cozy little home became a revolving door for doctors, relatives, and strangers with sorrowful faces. I watched my dad, the man who used to lift me up with one arm and laugh at my silly stories, slowly become frail and weak. Mom tried her best to keep things normal, putting fresh flowers in vases, baking cookies like always, but at night I would hear her quiet sobs leaking out from the bedroom, tearing through the silence of the house and leaving me breathless with helplessness. When I was 10, my dad passed away. The funeral is just a blur of black and gray in my memory. Adults whispered hollow words of comfort, white flowers piled high, and my mother's hand gripped mine so tightly it hurt. I didn't say anything. I just knew from that day on, my world would never be the same a week after the funeral. Mom called me to sit on the couch in the living room. Pale light filtered through the worn curtains, and I saw her twisting the hem of her shirt, avoiding my eyes. Really, she began, her voice trembling. I talked to Margaret, and we think it's best if you stay with her for a while, just until I can get everything sorted out. I looked up, my throat tightening. But why can't I stay here with you? I whispered, clinging to a tiny shred of hope. I need time to get things together to heal. Mom stroked my hair, but the touch felt so cold I wanted to pull away. The next day, Margaret came to pick me up on the drive to her modest 2-story house. Neither of us spoke. I just stared out the window, fighting back tears, while her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. When we arrived, she quietly carried my few bags into the guest room and quickly disappeared into the kitchen, the clatter of pots and pans echoing loudly as if trying to drown out the heavy silence in the months that followed. Mom only called once every few weeks. Every call ended the same way, with a promise that never changed. When can I come home? Mom, just a little longer, Ella, I promise. Just a little longer, but I didn't understand. And deep in Margaret's eyes, I knew she didn't either. It's going fine. Grandma did everything she could to make me feel less abandoned, cooking my favorite meals, helping me with homework, telling me stories about Dad's mischievous childhood. But nothing could fill the void Mom had left behind. I spent countless nights sitting by the window, staring down the empty street, wishing I could see Mom coming back smiling and calling for me, but she never came. And I started to understand that some cracks never heal. I just didn't know. Then, it was only the beginning. I was doing math homework at Grandma's kitchen table when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Mom stepping out of a shiny black SUV. Her hair was perfectly curled, her dress crisp and elegant, her face carefully made up as if she had never spent a day crying. A strange man sat behind the wheel, not bothering to get out, staring blankly ahead. Mom nearly burst through the door, her face glowing with excitement. "Ella!" she exclaimed, pulling me to my feet. "I have wonderful news for you." Rema. Margaret stepped out from the living room, arms crossed, her eyes sharper than ever. "Charlotte, what is this about?" she asked, her voice low and cautious. Mom flashed a smile I hadn't seen in 2 years. "You have to meet him." "Mom, you'll understand, sweetheart." She turned to me. "I'm getting married. His name is Gregory. He's a successful businessman, and he has 2 adorable daughters about your age. Our family will be complete again." Ella. I froze. I glanced out the window and saw Gregory still sitting there, not even glancing at the house. Mom didn't give me time to react. She packed up my things as if afraid I'd run, then grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the car. "Come on, your new sisters are excited to meet you." On the drive over, Mom talked nonstop about Gregory, about the upcoming wedding, about the amazing new house they had prepared for us. I just stared out the window, feeling empty. The SUV pulled up to a nice 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. 2 girls were sitting on the front steps, swinging their legs. They looked like twins with golden blonde hair and matching pink dresses. "These are Kayla and Kylie," Mom said, beaming. "Your new sisters." I stepped forward, trying to smile. "Hi, I'm Ella." "Yeah, we know. Kayla." The older one cut me off with a syrupy, sweet voice. "And icy eyes, Dad told us all about you," Kylie added with a smirk. "But you should remember," Kayla whispered, leaning in close. her voice like a dagger. "Dad belongs to us, and now your mom does too." I looked to Mom, hoping she'd notice something was wrong, but she just laughed and patted my shoulder as if everything was perfect at night. In the new room I had to share with Kayla and Kylie, I curled up in a corner of the bed, listening to them giggle and whisper. Everything in the room screamed of them. Pink paintings, princess pillows, and there wasn't a single space that felt like mine. 3 months later, the wedding took place. Mom wore white. Dean stood beside her looking like he was checking off a box. Chloe and Kylie wore sparkly bridesmaid dresses, and I stood behind them in a plain pale blue dress in the wedding photos. I was almost invisible, hidden behind their carefully posed bodies. Even at the reception, when everyone raised their glasses, I noticed Gregory's eyes never left Mom and his daughters, and never once landed on me. In the days after the wedding, our new life settled in. Quickly, Dean went to work, came home. Each night lifted Kayla and Kylie into his arms, kissed Mom, and walked right past me like I was Air Mom, desperate to please her new husband. And his family shifted all her attention to Kayla and Kylie. They got new dresses, new iPads. I got outdated sweaters from clearance racks. I tried to cope, tried to find my place in a family that clearly wasn't mine. But the harder I tried, the more lost I felt. And in the depths of that loneliness, I finally understood. The place I once called home was now just a distant memory I didn't know when I would ever feel welcome again. Maybe never. I grew used to being invisible in what was supposed to be my home. Dean would come home, scoop Kayla and Kylie into his arms, kiss Mom passionately, and brush past me like I was a ghost. Mom, instead of noticing, would just give me an awkward smile and push me further away with chilly reminders. "Riley, don't be so demanding. You need to learn to share." Our first Christmas in the new house arrived with the sound of laughter, just not mine. Chloe and Kylie tore open box after box of carefully wrapped presents under the glittering tree, the latest iPads, designer jackets, expensive sneakers. When it was my turn, Mom handed me a small box wrapped in crumpled silver paper. Inside was an old model phone and a few cheap sweaters that still smelled like fresh plastic. I forced a smile and thanked her, but as I turned away, I clearly heard Kylie whisper, "At least you got something right. What more do you want?" I hid the gift in my drawer and locked it. But just a week later, after coming home from school, I found the phone smashed on the floor. Next to it was a scrap of paper with messy writing. "No one needs leftovers in this house." I brought the shattered phone to Mom, my hands trembling with anger and hurt. "Look at this," I said, my voice almost breaking. "They did this." Mom just sighed and spoke wearily. "Riley, you can't blame your sisters. Every time something happens, you need to grow up." I clutched the broken plastic in my hand, the coldness seeping into my heart. One late spring afternoon, just after I turned 13. Mom called me into the living room. Dean stood there, arms crossed, and Mom was nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. "Riley," she began hesitantly, "Dean and I have good news. I'm pregnant. You're going to have a little brother." The room spun around me. I forced myself to nod. Liato said no more. "So I'll be a big sister," I mumbled. Mom beamed, as if everything was perfect. "And because we need to get ready for the baby," she said, glancing at Gregory for courage. "You'll move into Kayla and Kylie's room. Your room will become the nursery." It froze. "No," I whispered, then said louder, "No, that's my room. Dad bought it for me." Dean frowned. Chloe and Kylie, hearing the commotion, peeked around the corner, their eyes gleaming. Riley, Mom snapped, "Don't be selfish. Your little brother needs his own room. You're just sharing a little. It's not a big deal." I stood straighter, my heart filled with a fury I'd never known. "This isn't sharing," I said, my voice trembling. "This is pushing me out to replace. Me dad bought that house for us. You came in here acting like everything was yours, and now you're taking the last thing I have." Silence fell over the room, thick as fog. Mom said nothing. Dean shook his head in disappointment. Chloe and Kylie smiled triumphantly. That night, dinner was silent. No one spoke to me. No one even looked at me. Even Mom's gaze avoided mine, like I was a stain on her perfect family portrait. In the days that followed, I became invisible. Dean would come home, hug his daughters, kiss his wife, and walk right past me. Mom, who used to hug me every night, now gave me cold nods when I said hello, Chloe, and Kylie, no longer bothering to hide it, took over my study space, rifled through my things, and tore up the drawings I worked so hard on. I lived like a ghost, an extra piece of furniture forgotten in the house, once filled with Dad's laughter, and every night curled up on the narrow bed in my crowded new room. I told myself if this was family, maybe I'd never had a real family at all. 3 days passed in suffocating silence. I ate alone at the edge of the table, did my homework under the hallway light, and fell asleep to the sounds of laughter from the living room, where no one bothered to ask if I wanted to join on the third night after the doors shut and the house grew quiet. I quietly packed a few clothes into my backpack, slipped my locket with Dad's photo into my jacket pocket, and picked up my phone to dial a familiar number. Grandma Margaret's voice answered after 2 rings, still as gentle as ever. Riley. She gasped, as if she had been waiting for this call. Grandma, I can't stay here anymore. I whispered, tears choking me. Stay right there, she said firmly. I'm coming. About half an hour later, the headlights of her old car swept across the yard. I slipped my backpack onto my shoulders, crept down the stairs, and through the kitchen window. I saw Mom and Gregory glued to the TV, not even noticing Chloe. And Kylie giggled over their phones. No one turned around. No one asked where I was going. I opened the door as quietly as I could and ran outside without looking back. Grandma Margaret stepped out of her car and pulled me into a hug without a word. I buried my face into her shoulder, letting my tears soak her rough wool sweater. We drove through the night in silence, but for the first time in a long time, I felt peaceful, like a huge weight had lifted off my chest. The next morning, when the sunlight streamed through the window of my old bedroom at Grandma's house, I woke up and realized I was truly home. No cold stares, no whispered comments, no lonely dinners. Grandma Margaret sat at the kitchen table making me a cup of hot cocoa, just like she used to. When I sat down, she placed her hand over mine, her eyes more serious than ever. Riley, she said slowly, I talked to your mom. She agreed to give up custody. I froze, my hands trembling. You mean I can live with you I want to adopt you officially, she said, her voice warm and steady. Not because I have to, but because I love you. I've always loved you, Ella. I broke down crying for the first time in months, not from pain but from relief. I clung to her, whispering through my sobs, I want to be your daughter. The following weeks passed in a busy but happy blur. Paperwork was handled quickly, mostly because Mom didn't put up a fight. She signed away her custody rights with a careless scribble, not even asking a single question on the day of the hearing. Margaret held my hand tightly as we stepped into the tiny courtroom. The judge smiled at me and declared, From this day forward, Ella is officially the daughter of Margaret Harris. I signed the papers with a trembling but determined hand, feeling like I was finally writing my own destiny. On the drive home, Margaret turned to me, her eyes shining in the setting sun. You don't have to fight so hard anymore, Ella, she whispered. From now on, you'll always have a place to come back to, a real home. I smiled, feeling my heart beat in a way it hadn't in years. Life at Margaret's house felt like a fresh breeze sweeping away all the gray clouds inside me. Every day I woke up to the smell of toast, did homework at the old wooden table, and listened to warm stories about Dad's childhood. No yelling, no cold shoulders, no feeling like I didn't belong. I threw myself into my studies like it was the only lifeline I had in high school. I made honor roll every year. Grandma Margaret always sat front row at every award ceremony, clapping the loudest when they called my name. When I was 17, I applied to State University, majoring in business administration. When the acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, I could hardly believe my eyes. But even more surprising was the second letter. An award for a partial scholarship because of my academic excellence. I ran straight into the kitchen, waving the letter where Margaret was kneading dough. Grandma Margaret, I got in, and I got a scholarship too. She dropped the wooden spoon and hugged me tightly, her voice shaking with emotion. You did it, Ella. Your dad would be so proud that evening while we sat by the candlelight. She pulled out a folder from a drawer. I started a savings fund for you after your dad passed away, she said, placing it on the table. I wanted to make sure you could follow your dreams no matter what. I opened the folder and gasped at the number inside. With that money and the scholarship combined, I had enough to pay for college, and then some that fall, I left our small town for a bustling city where I had to learn how to survive on my own. During those first lonely nights in the dorm, I missed Margaret's kitchen and her hugs fiercely. But that longing fueled me to push harder every day. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. I graduated with honors and received a job offer from a prestigious company, Clarendon and Pierce, as a project manager assistant. The job demanded sharp thinking, precision, and resilience, all skills I had honed over the hard years. A few weeks after starting my job, I got a call from Margaret's lawyer's office. I rushed back home, emotions swirling inside me. She had left me everything. The cozy 2-story house in the suburbs, her savings account, and all the keepsakes I thought had been lost forever. She had prepared everything for me, even when she was no longer around. The day I moved back into the old house, I stood at the doorstep, my hand trembling as I slid the key into the lock. The house was just as I remembered, white curtains fluttering in the breeze, the familiar kitchen table, and the sweet scent of cinnamon rolls still lingering in the air. I cleaned and fixed up the house little by little, turning it into a space of my own. No more fake laughter, no more cold stares, just pure peace. Something I had never truly experienced until now. Work at Clarendon and Piers went better than I ever expected. After a year, I was promoted, earning enough to live comfortably and still save for the future. I spent my weekends planting flowers in the small garden, baking, reading books, and sometimes just sitting on the porch watching the clouds drift by. Though old memories sometimes crept into my dreams, they no longer weighed me down. I knew I had stepped out of the darkness, and Margaret, my true mother, had helped me find the light I thought I had lost forever. My life took a new path, quiet but steady in my final year of college while rushing to finish my senior thesis. A sudden phone call turned my world upside down. Your grandmother has been admitted to the hospital, the doctor said over the phone, trying to stay calm. We found a tumor. It's quite serious. I threw my bucks into my backpack and caught the earliest bus home. When I walked into her hospital room, Margaret lay there, much thinner, but her smile was as bright as ever. Don't make that sad face, Ella, she joked weakly. I'm still waiting for your cinnamon rolls. I sat beside her, holding her hand, feeling the frailty slowly creeping through the fingers that once held me so tightly. You're going to be fine, I whispered, though I didn't believe it myself. From that day on, I came home every weekend, sitting by her bedside, reading to her, telling her about the dreams waiting for me after graduation. She always listened, her warm eyes sparkling whenever I spoke about the future. I'm proud of you, she said gently, brushing my hair. No matter what happens, you have to live brightly. Ella, I've seen the light in you for a long time. On graduation day, her condition worsened. She couldn't attend the ceremony, but we streamed it in her hospital room. When I walked across the stage and took my diploma, I looked straight into the camera, smiled, and blew her a kiss. That afternoon, I rushed back to the hospital, still wearing my graduation gown, clutching my diploma. I sat by her bed, telling her everything. The loud applause, the congratulations from friends, the promises for the future. She squeezed my hand, her face filled with peace. Now I can rest easy, she whispered. You're strong enough to walk on your own. That night, as I fell asleep next to her bed, she quietly passed away, her hand still holding mine. Her funeral was simple but dignified, just as she had always wanted. I stood silently by her grave, clutching the locket with photos of her and Dad inside, vowing to never betray the woman who had saved my life. Tears. A few weeks later, I was invited to her lawyer's office. Mr. Jenkins, the family's kind old lawyer, handed me a folder. Grandma Margaret planned everything a long time ago, he said, his gentle eyes meeting mine. She left everything to you. The house, the savings, and a few small investments. I opened the folder, reading every line of the will, feeling my heart tighten from the silent love she had poured into every detail. There's also a letter she left for you, Mr. Jenkins added, handing me a small cream-colored envelope with delicate handwriting. I opened it, and tears spilled out at the first words. My dearest Ella, I knew. One day, you'd have to walk without me, but I believe you are ready. This house, the savings, they are not burdens. They are seeds for you to plant. A life brighter than anything I ever dreamed of. I love you, and I'll always be watching over you wherever you go. I hugged the letter to my chest, letting the salty tears fall freely. I no longer had blood relatives waiting for me out there, but I had the legacy of unconditional love, the kind that had given me wings to fly. I decided to stay in the house, filled with so many memories and so much love every morning. When the sunlight poured through the familiar window, I whispered a silent thank you. And with every step forward, I knew that no matter what, she was with me in every beat of my heart. On the day of Margaret's funeral, the sky was as gray as the emptiness inside me. I stood beside her coffin, receiving mechanical condolences from distant relatives I had never met. Suddenly in the crowd, I saw them. Mom, Gregory, Kayla, Kylie, and a little boy, around 6 years old, clinging shyly to my mother's hand. I froze. Mom stepped forward, her face thinner, trying to smile gently. Why, she said, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry for your loss. Grandma, Margaret was a wonderful woman. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Dean stood silently behind her, saying nothing. Chloe and Kylie, now young women, also stayed quiet, their eyes darting away. Mom reached for my hand and gave it a soft squeeze. Could we have dinner together sometime? I know I made mistakes. I want to make it right. Maybe our family can start over? I didn't answer right away. Inside me was a fierce battle, memories of lonely years clashing with a naive hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. I'll think about it. I finally said, gently pulling my hand away. A week later, they called Mom, invited me to dinner. I hesitated for a long time before agreeing. Part of me wanted to believe people could change that loss, could make them cherish what truly mattered. That evening dinner was in the modest rental home where Mom and Gregory now lived in the suburbs. It was simple but clean. Chloe and Kylie sat at the table looking uneasy, their former arrogance gone. The mom made my favorite roast, something she hadn't cooked since I was little. We ate awkwardly, chatting about safe topics, work, the weather, small future plans. I noticed Mom had changed a little, or at least she knew how to hide her old sharpness. Dean was polite but distant. Chloe and Kylie talked about their tough jobs. Chloe as a receptionist at a small office, Kylie working retail at a local supermarket. When Mom sighed about a car repair bill, I almost instinctively pulled some cash from my wallet. "Let me help," I said, slipping the money into her hand. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice cracking. "Thank you, Ella. I'm really grateful." I gave a strained smile, not realizing that very moment opened a door. I should have left firmly shut. From then on, it became a habit. A month later, Kayla called shyly, asking for help fixing her computer, because without it, she'd lose her job. Madison texted asking for money to pay hospital bills from a small accident. Dina asked if I could front money for school. Books for Ryan, the little boy, because he really needed them for the new school year. But at first I didn't think much of it. They were small amounts, a few hundred, always with promises to repay as soon as things get better. Each time I transferred money, I told myself I was doing the right thing, that if Margaret were alive, she'd want me to help family. But slowly, I started noticing strange signs. Dinner invites became rare. Thank you texts grew shorter, colder. The small loans turned into bigger. Requests with soba stories harder and harder to believe. One day I dropped by their house unannounced. I saw a brand new car gleaming in the driveway inside. Kylie was showing off her brand new phone to Kayla. I stood outside listening to their cheerful laughter, realizing they didn't even notice me. I turned and walked quickly down the alley, a sharp ache gripping my chest. A thought crept into my mind, small but chilling maybe. Just like before, I was nothing but a walking ATM to them. Maybe all the apologies, the smiles, the dinners were just a cover for a plan far more calculated than I had imagined. That afternoon, after a stressful meeting at work, my phone rang. It was Mom. I slumped back in my chair, too tired to think, and answered, "Sweetheart, how are you?" she cooed, the same sugary tone I had learned to be wary of lately. We made small talk about work, the weather, random meaningless topics. Then she hesitated. Gregory's car broke down again. "Could you help us out a little? Just a few hundred, I promise we'll pay you back soon," she said almost robotically. I agreed, "Okay, Mom, I'll transfer it now." She chirped out her thanks, wished me a great day, then hurriedly hung up. I set my phone down and was about to get back to work when I realized the call was still connected. For a moment I hesitated, then pressed the phone back to my ear, and in that moment my whole world froze on the other end. Kayla's voice rang out unmistakably mocking. "Did she bite?" "Of course." My mother sneered, a low laugh escaping. "Riley always does. All you have to do is sound a little sad." And she pulls out her wallet. Kylie giggled. "He's so naive. She actually thinks we love her. You kids should go easy." Gregory cut in, his voice low, slow, and steady. "Just make up some car trouble. Little illnesses, little by little we can squeeze more out of her." Mom laughed loudly. "As long as she still thinks we are real family, she'll never say no. And with that house, the savings, and her fat paycheck, we can keep planning ahead. She's as gullible as she was when she was little," Madison chimed in, full of contempt. "Dad used to say, Ella's just like her father, too." "And stupid." I heard the clinking of glasses, laughter filling the air. None of them realized that on the other end I was standing frozen. I gripped the phone tightly, my blood turning to ice. There was no doubt now, the smiles, the hugs, the caring words, it had all been a carefully staged act. I ended the call with a decisive press of the button, but their cruel words kept echoing in my mind, slicing through the memories I had once cherished that night. I lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling. I didn't cry. The shock had gone beyond tears. Instead, there was a cold clarity I had never felt before. Family, it had long ceased to exist for me. All that remained was exploitation, thinly masked by fake affection. The next morning, as the first light slipped through the curtains, I had already decided I would never be a puppet in their show again. That evening, I showed up at my mother's house right on time. Dean's SUV was parked in the driveway, and inside the smell of lasagna filled the air, as if trying to paint a picture of a perfect family. Chloe and Kylie were dressed neatly, giggling around the well-set dining table. Little Ryan ran around occasionally, glancing at me with innocent eyes, unaware of what was coming. Mom pulled me into a hug, her eyes sparkling with fake joy, something I no longer fell for. "Sweetheart, tonight, we want to share something important with you," she said, motioning me to sit at the table. Dinner passed with boring chatter, forced laughter, and secret glances they thought I wouldn't notice. When dessert came out, Gregory cleared his throat and placed his hand over Mom's like a well-rehearsed signal. "Riley," Gregory said warmly, "we need your help with something." Mom gave a hesitant smile, pretending to struggle. "This house really needs urgent repairs. There are foundation issues." The estimate came out to $15,000. I placed my silver spoon down, crossed my arms, and looked at each of them. "And you want me to pay for it?" The room instantly grew heavy. Dean nodded slowly. Chloe and Kylie gave awkward smiles, and Mom twisted the napkin in her lap. I smiled a strange, calm smile. "No." My answer dropped like a stone onto the table, shattering their thin disguise, Riley. Mom quickly said, her voice rising, "You don't understand, this is your family." "I understand perfectly." I interrupted, my voice cold and steady. "More than you think." I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. "I heard everything your conversation the other day. You forgot to hang up." Mom's face turned pale. Dean froze. Chloe and Kylie grabbed each other's hands, panicked. "All you ever wanted from me was money," I said, enunciating every word. "Family? What family H? The people who see me as a walking ATM? The ones who laughed at how easy I am to fool Riley? We were just joking, sweetheart." Mom stammered, tears streaming down her face. "We didn't mean it, didn't mean it." I laughed, a dry, hollow laugh. "You're great actors. I almost believed you." I stood up, pushing the chair back. "I have nothing left to give you, no money, no love." No. Mom rushed toward me, trying to grab my hand, but I stepped back. My eyes cold as ice. "Don't call me, don't text me, don't come to my house from this moment on. We are strangers." I turned and walked out of that house for the last time, never looking back behind me. I heard Mom sobbing, Gregory shouting, Kayla and Kylie pleading, but I kept walking, each step steadier than the last. As if escaping a nightmare that had lasted far too long, the next morning I submitted my transfer request to the New York branch. The approval came almost immediately. My work record was spotless. I put Margaret's house up for sale, a decision that broke my heart. Every wall, every window held memories I had treasured, but I knew that to truly start over I had to let go. The house sold faster than I expected. A young family bought it, bringing with them the sound of children's laughter I hoped would fill the old empty spaces with the proceeds from the house and my savings. I found a small apartment on the Upper West Side, a place with big windows overlooking the park where each morning I could welcome the first light and remind myself I survived. I rewrote my story without needing anyone to lead me on my first night in the new apartment. I sat alone on the bare floor, sipping hot tea, feeling a strange, deep peace. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now I was carrying only what was worthy, and leaving all the pretenders behind. In those first months in New York, I slowed down, learning to love myself after years of chasing things that never truly belonged to me. My little 17th floor apartment with its wide window opening to the park felt like a private world. I controlled, for the very first time, every morning. I woke early, brewed a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and either read or wrote a few lines in the journal Margaret had once given me. Every night I wandered through tree-linked streets, looking up at the glittering skyscrapers, my heart as light as if it had never known pain. Work at the New York branch was busy, but thrilling. I quickly proved myself, earning the trust of my superiors with important projects, each small success built like steady stones, rebuilding the confidence that my past had tried to crush. But what truly changed me wasn't just the work or the new city. It was the people I met along the way. I became friends with Sophia, a colleague in the planning department who, like me, had grown up without a real family. Sophia invited me to small weekend gatherings with her circle, a group of people who had been abandoned, orphaned, or turned away by their families, but had found each other and built something stronger. We had homemade pizza nights, weekend camping trips, simple birthday parties with homemade cakes. No one judged, no one used anyone. There was just laughter, real hugs, and the quiet warmth of simply belonging. One evening, as we gathered around a small fire pit in Central Park, Sophia handed me a cup of hot cocoa, her eyes glowing under the firelight. "Family," she said, "isn't who you're born to, it's who stays with you, even when they don't have to." I looked around at the smiling faces, the hands ready to catch me if I stumbled, and I understood for the first time deeply, blood can betray you. True love never will. Grandma Margaret had taught me that with her whole life, with every hug when I stumbled, with every moment she believed in me, when my own mother didn't with her. Quiet patience that never asked for anything in return. I had spent too many years searching for love in the wrong places, but now I wasn't searching anymore. Who of that kid's side I was living it every day, every moment on spring morning when the trees along the streets began to bud. I stood before the simple headstone where Margaret rested, I placed a bouquet of pale blue hydrangeas, her favorite, and whispered, "I found my home. Margaret, right here in the hearts of those who truly love me," expecting nothing in return. The gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of flowers and a whisper of blessing. I closed my eyes, letting my soul drift with the wind, feeling a pure freedom I had never known. I knew life would still bring rainy days and unexpected turns, but this time I would walk forward without fear, carrying the truest kind of love with me. A light that would never go out. Family isn't where we're born. Family is where we are loved the right way. And after all the losses, I finally found mine, right inside my own heart. My story from a child abandoned in her own home to an adult who built a new life, with her own hands, taught me one crucial lesson. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, respect, and sincerity. Sometimes strangers become true family, while those who share our blood leave only scars. Today, I choose to live for myself, to build a life full of love and meaning with the people who deserve it. What do you think about Ella's journey to find her true family? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, inspiring stories about life and family in our upcoming